You might think your daily habits make you productive, but what if they're quietly making you dumber? From bragging about no sleep to arguing over nothing, these everyday routines secretly expose low intelligence. Let's uncover the uncomfortable truth your brain won't admit. Number one, constantly needing background noise. You know those people who can't study, sleep, or even shower without a podcast or TV humming in the background? They'll tell you it helps them focus. But here's the truth, it's not focus, it's mental clutter disguised as comfort. Studies from the University of British Columbia found that people who constantly need background noise show lower working memory and reduced creative output. Why? Because the brain never fully engages with a single task. It's trapped in shallow attention mode, always half distracted, never deep thinking. Smart people crave silence because silence sharpens thought. Noise-dependent people, on the other hand, crave stimulation because they can't generate it internally. Their brains rely on external chaos to fill the cognitive void. So if you can't handle your own thoughts without Spotify running, that's not multitasking, it's mental dependency. Your brain isn't thriving, it's surviving on background static. This isn't genius, it's self-sabotage. Number two, seeing everything as always or never. You know that person who says things like, "You always do this," or "I never get a break." They speak in absolutes. Everything's black or white. No gray area exists. It sounds dramatic, sure, but psychologically, this habit is a red flag for what's called dichotomous thinking, and it's strongly linked to lower cognitive flexibility. A 2020 study published in Cognitive Therapy and Research found that individuals who default to all or nothing thinking patterns score significantly lower on problem-solving tasks and show reduced adaptability when faced with nuanced situations. Why? Because their brains resist complexity. Instead of weighing variables, they collapse everything into binary categories: good or bad, success or failure, right or wrong. Here's what's really happening. Black and white thinking is a mental shortcut. It feels efficient, no need to analyze, just pick a side. But intelligent brains don't simplify reality, they navigate it. They understand that most problems exist in shades of gray, requiring context, flexibility, and judgment. The person who says you never listen isn't making a valid point. They're showing you their brain can't handle middle ground. Smart people say things like sometimes and it depends. Rigid thinkers demand certainty because uncertainty scares them. So if your vocabulary is full of always and never, that's not conviction, it's cognitive laziness. Reality is messy and your brain should be able to handle it. Number three, overthinking every simple decision. You've seen them. They spend 20 minutes choosing a Netflix movie, 45 minutes deciding where to eat lunch, and hours agonizing over which $15 phone case to buy. They think they're being thorough or strategic, but here's the truth. Overthinking trivial decisions is a sign of poor prioritization and weak cognitive efficiency. Research from Cornell University on decision fatigue found that people who spend excessive mental energy on low-stakes choices perform significantly worse on important decisions later. Why? Because their brains treat every choice as equally critical. They can't differentiate between which shirt to wear and which job to accept. Here's what's happening. Intelligent brains use tiered decision-making. They reserve deep analysis for high-impact choices and automate or quickly resolve trivial ones. Low-efficiency brains give equal weight to everything, burning mental resources on nonsense. A 2019 study in organizational behavior and human decision processes found that executives and high performers make small decisions in under 30 seconds, while low performers take 5 to 10 times longer, not because they're more careful, but because they lack decision frameworks. The irony? Overthinkers believe they're being smart, analyzing all options. But real intelligence knows when to think and when to just pick. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit daily to eliminate decision fatigue. Barack Obama said, "I don't want to make decisions about what I'm eating or wearing because I have too many other decisions to make." So if you're still reading reviews 90 minutes into choosing a restaurant, that's not thoroughness. It's cognitive waste. Smart brains allocate attention proportionally. Weak ones treat choosing socks like choosing a mortgage. Number four, needing instant results in everything. You've met them. The person who quits the gym after 2 weeks because they don't see results, who buys every get-rich-quick scheme, who can't sit through a documentary without checking their phone. They want everything now, and if it takes effort or patience, they're out. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The inability to delay gratification is one of the strongest predictors of lower intelligence and lifetime failure. Remember the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment? Kids who could wait 15 minutes for a second marshmallow went on to have higher SAT scores, better careers, and healthier lives decades later. But here's the part nobody talks about. Follow-up studies from Columbia University found that adults who consistently choose instant rewards over delayed ones score lower on working memory, impulse control, and long-term planning, all core components of fluid intelligence. Why? Because your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for higher-level thinking, literally shuts down when you prioritize immediate pleasure. You're not thinking strategically, you're reacting emotionally. It's the difference between, I want this cookie now, and if I skip this cookie, I'll hit my fitness goal. Smart people endure short-term discomfort for long-term gain. Low-level thinkers can't see past tomorrow. They chase instant dopamine hits, binge watching, impulse buying, scrolling TikTok for hours because their brains are trapped in the present moment. So if you can't wait, plan, or invest time into something that won't pay off immediately, that's not impatience. It's intellectual short-sightedness. Your brain is running on autopilot, not strategy. Number 5. Confusing correlation with causation. You've heard them? Ice cream sales go up and so do drownings, so ice cream causes drowning. Or countries with more Nobel Prize winners eat more chocolate. Therefore, chocolate makes you smarter. They see two things happening at the same time and immediately assume one caused the other. But this mental error, confusing correlation with causation, is one of the clearest markers of weak logical reasoning. A 2017 study in Thinking and Reasoning Journal found that individuals who consistently mistake correlation for causation score significantly lower on tests of analytical thinking and probabilistic reasoning. Why? Because their brains take shortcuts. Instead of asking what else could explain this, they jump straight to A must have caused B, here's what's really happening. Their brains crave simple explanations. The idea that two things just happen to occur together feels unsatisfying, so they invent a causal link. It's mentally lazy. Smart people immediately ask, could there be a third variable? Is this just coincidence? What does the actual data show? The tragedy is this error fuels so much modern nonsense. My cousin got vaccinated and got sick the next week. Therefore, vaccines made him sick. Successful people wake up early. Therefore, waking up early makes you successful. No, there could be 100 other factors. So if you see two trends moving together and immediately shout, that's why, that's not insight. That's your brain confusing a pattern with proof. Real intelligence knows the difference between related and caused, and it doesn't assume causation without evidence. Number 6, sleeping less than 5 hours and bragging about it. You've seen the type. They post rise and grind at 4 a.m., brag about only needing 4 hours of sleep, and act like exhaustion is a personality trait. But science is brutal here. Chronic sleep deprivation doesn't signal discipline, but it signals cognitive decline. The University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine found that people sleeping under 5 hours a night for just a week showed IQ drops equivalent to aging 10 years. Another study by the National Institutes of Health linked poor sleep to impaired memory, slower reaction time, and weaker decision-making, all hallmarks of lower cognitive performance. Smart people protect their sleep because they understand it's fuel for the brain. Those who sacrifice it for hustle culture are burning their intelligence for temporary validation. You don't outwork fatigue, you outthink it. So the next time someone brags about running on coffee and chaos, remember, that's not ambition. That's self-inflicted stupidity. Number 7, taking feedback like a personal attack. You know that person who can't hear that idea needs work without thinking you hate them? The one who interprets constructive criticism as a declaration of war? They take everything personally. A work email, a driving suggestion, even a restaurant recommendation becomes a threat to their ego. But this habit isn't sensitivity. It's a failure of cognitive separation, and it's strongly linked to lower emotional and intellectual intelligence. According to research from the University of California, Berkeley, Individuals with high ego defensiveness, meaning they can't separate their identity from their actions, show significantly lower performance in learning environments. Why? Because their brains treat feedback as danger. Instead of processing information objectively, they go into threat mode. Heart rate spikes, cortisol floods the system, and rational thinking shuts down. Here's what intelligent people understand. Criticism of your work is not criticism of your worth. When someone says, "This report has errors," a smart brain hears, "Here's data to improve." A fragile brain hears, "You're incompetent." One response leads to growth. The other leads to defensiveness and stagnation. The inability to depersonalize feedback is essentially your ego holding your intelligence hostage. You're so busy protecting your self-image that you can't absorb new information. It's the mental equivalent of covering your ears and shouting, "I'm fine," while your house burns down. So if every critique feels like a personal attack, that's not emotional depth. It's cognitive rigidity. Smart people separate me from my mistakes. Fragile thinkers fuse them together and wonder why they never improve. Number 8. Seeing conspiracies in random events. You know the type. Everything's connected. A celebrity dies and it's not a coincidence. Gas prices rise and they're controlling us. 3 people sneeze in a week and suddenly it's a biological attack. They think they're awake, seeing patterns the sheep miss. But in reality, this habit, seeing intentional patterns in random events, is a cognitive error called illusory pattern perception, and it's strongly linked to lower analytical reasoning. A 2018 study from the University of Kent found that individuals who score lower on critical thinking tests are significantly more likely to believe in conspiracy theories and see causal connections where none exist. Why? Because their brains crave order. Randomness feels chaotic and uncomfortable, so they invent narratives, even false ones, just to make sense of the noise. Here's the kicker. Smart people are comfortable with uncertainty. They can say, "That's just a coincidence," or "We don't know yet," without spiraling into paranoia. Low-level thinkers need explanations for everything, even when none exist. Their brains can't tolerate ambiguity, so they fill the gaps with fantasy. And it's not just harmless quirks. Research from MIT shows that people who believe unfounded patterns also make worse financial decisions, fall for scams more easily, and struggle with probabilistic thinking. They see meaning in stock charts that experts know is noise. They buy lottery tickets because the universe owes them. They reject data because it doesn't fit their invented storyline. So if you're convinced that nothing is random and everything is orchestrated, that's not insight. It's apophenia, the brain's desperate attempt to impose order on chaos. Real intelligence knows the difference between a pattern and a coincidence. And more importantly, it's comfortable not knowing. Number 9. Misremembering your own past beliefs. You've seen it. Someone who swore Bitcoin was a scam in 2015 now claims they always believed in crypto. Or the person who mocked remote work pre-pandemic now insists they always saw it coming. They genuinely believe they held the correct opinion all along, even when evidence proves otherwise. This isn't lying. It's a cognitive error called hindsight bias, and it's strongly linked to poor metacognitive awareness. A 2014 study in psychological science found that individuals with lower self-awareness and cognitive flexibility are significantly more prone to rewriting their past beliefs to align with present outcomes. Why? Because their brains can't tolerate being wrong retroactively. Instead of admitting, "I changed my mind," they rewrite history. Here's the problem. When you misremember your past beliefs, you rob yourself of learning. You can't improve if you pretend you were always right. Smart people keep records, journals, old emails, texts, to track how their thinking evolved. They embrace the discomfort of saying, "Yeah, I was totally wrong about that in 2019. Low-level thinkers, they're convinced their memory is perfect. They'll argue with you about what they said 3 years ago, even when you have receipts. Their brains smooth over contradictions automatically, protecting their ego at the expense of growth. A Harvard study on prediction tracking found that people who accurately recall their past predictions improve decision-making over time, while those who misremember stay stuck making the same errors. So if you're constantly saying, "I always knew that," When outcomes become clear, you're not prophetic. You're confabulating. Real intelligence admits, I got that wrong, and here's what I learned. Number 10, using anecdotes as evidence. You've heard it 1,000 times. Well, my cousin smoked for 40 years and lived to 95, so smoking can't be that bad. Or, I knew someone who ate keto and got sick, therefore keto is dangerous. They use personal stories, anecdotes, as if they're scientific proof. But this habit, treating individual experiences as universal truths, is a classic sign of weak reasoning. A 2016 study in cognitive science found that people with lower analytical reasoning scores are significantly more likely to accept anecdotal evidence over statistical data. Why? Because stories feel real and numbers feel abstract. Their brains prioritize emotional resonance over logical validity. Here's the problem. Anecdotes are the lowest form of evidence. They're uncontrolled, biased, and statistically meaningless. Your uncle's experience tells you what happened to one person, not what happens on average. Smart people understand this instinctively. They say, that's interesting, but what does the research show? Low-level thinkers do the opposite. They elevate personal stories above peer-reviewed studies, global data, and expert consensus. My grandma never exercised and lived to 100 becomes their counter-argument to decades of longevity research. The tragedy is this mental habit makes people vulnerable to manipulation. Testimonials, case studies, and success stories feel convincing because they're vivid. But marketers, scammers, and pseudoscientists exploit this weakness relentlessly. So if your first response to data is, well, I know someone who, that's not critical thinking, it's anecdotal bias. Real intelligence demands, show me the pattern, not the exception. Number 11, interrupting before understanding. You know them. They cut you off mid-sentence, finishing your thoughts before you've even articulated them. They can't wait their turn. The second they think they know where you're going, they jump in. They think it's quick thinking, but it's actually a failure of cognitive patience and comprehension. A 2018 study from Northwestern University found that chronic interrupters score lower on listening comprehension and are more likely to misunderstand the speaker's actual point. Why? Because their brains prioritize response over understanding. They're not listening to comprehend, they're listening to reply. Here's what's happening. Interrupting isn't just rude, it's cognitively lazy. Smart brains can hold multiple thoughts simultaneously. They hear you out, process your full argument, then respond. Weak brains can't juggle that complexity, so they interrupt to offload their thought before they forget it. Research in communication research shows that people who interrupt frequently also make more logical errors in debate because they're responding to assumptions, not to what was actually said. They think, I know what you're going to say, but they're often wrong. The irony? Interrupters think they're demonstrating quick wit, but real intelligence is measured in comprehension accuracy, not response speed. If you can't wait 10 seconds for someone to finish a sentence, your brain isn't fast. It's impatient and inefficient. So if you're constantly cutting people off, that's not intellectual agility. It's cognitive restlessness masking as engagement. Number 12, unable to change your mind when proven wrong. You know the type? You show them data, research, video evidence, expert testimony, and they still cling to their original belief like a life raft. They'll say, well, I just feel like, or that's what experts say, but they treat changing their mind as weakness, not wisdom. But psychologically, this inability to update beliefs in the face of evidence is a hallmark of low cognitive flexibility and weak reasoning. A landmark 2020 study from MIT found that individuals who resist belief updating, even when presented with contradictory evidence, show lower performance on fluid intelligence tests and struggle with adaptive problem solving. Why? Because their brains prioritize consistency over accuracy. They'd rather be wrong confidently than right awkwardly. Here's what intelligent people understand. Changing your mind isn't flip-flopping, it's updating your mental software. When new data arrives, smart brains run the update. Rigid brains hit ignore and keep running on outdated code. The irony? People who never change their minds think they're strong-willed. But refusing to update beliefs despite evidence isn't strength. It's cognitive paralysis. It's the brain equivalent of insisting the earth is flat because you believed it yesterday and can't handle the discomfort of being wrong. This doesn't mean you should change your mind on a whim. It means when evidence piles up against you, intellectual honesty demands you reconsider. Smart people say, I used to think X, but now I know Y. Rigid thinkers say, don't confuse me with facts. So if you've held the same beliefs for 10 years despite mountains of new information, that's not conviction. It's mental stagnation. Intelligence evolves. Stupidity fossilizes. So how many of these habits sound uncomfortably familiar? Because here's the thing, intelligence isn't about knowing big words or memorizing trivia. It's about how your brain behaves when no one's watching. The small daily choices, the gossip you repeat, the sleep you skip, the trends you follow, are the fingerprints of your thinking. The smartest people aren't flawless. They're aware. They question, adapt, and correct. The rest stay stuck, defending their noise, their pride, their habits. If you recognize yourself in any of these signs, that's not an insult. It's a wake-up call. Want to actually raise your IQ? Start by doing the opposite of everything on this list. Because self-awareness, not arrogance, is where real intelligence begins. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let's keep upgrading how we think, one uncomfortable truth at a time.